Jennifer spent the next morning making copies of everything. The photos, her notes, the factory owner's business card. She saved them to 3 different cloud storage accounts and emailed encrypted copies to her supervisor back home. In this kind of work, you learned quickly that evidence could disappear in an instant. Her phone rang just before noon. It was Detective Pravat from the Regional Police Anti-Trafficking Unit. Her organization had worked with him before. He was one of the few local officers they actually trusted. They met at a small restaurant away from the main streets. Pravat was a thin man in his 50s with tired eyes and a permanent worry line between his eyebrows. He ordered tea for both of them and listened carefully as Jennifer explained what she'd seen. When she showed him the photo, his expression darkened. He was quiet for a long moment, just staring at the image of the girl in chains. "Her name is May," he finally said. "At least that's what we think. We've had reports about this factory for almost a year now, but getting inside is difficult. The owner has friends in high places. People who make problems disappear." Jennifer felt her stomach drop. "You already knew about her?" Pravat looked uncomfortable. "We knew there were workers being held against their will. We didn't know about the chains. That's new, or maybe they're just getting bolder." He rubbed his face with both hands. "The system here is broken. Factory owners pay bribes. Officials look the other way. And people like May just disappear into these places. So what do?" Jennifer asked. She could hear the frustration in her own voice. "We build a case," Pravat said. "A case so strong that even his connections can't save him. We need more evidence. We need to identify all the victims. We need financial records showing he's buying people. And we need to move carefully. Because if he suspects we're coming, those workers will be moved to another location. Maybe even killed." The word hung in the air between them. Killed. Jennifer had known the stakes were high, but hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Over the next 2 weeks, Jennifer became obsessed. She barely slept. She spent her days tracking down former workers from the factory, people who'd managed to escape or had been released after working off their supposed debts. Each interview added another piece to the puzzle. She met a young man named Krit who'd worked at the factory 3 years ago. He told her about the labor brokers who traveled to poor villages, promising good jobs in the city. They'd pay families a cash advance, then claim the workers owed them huge debts that had to be worked off. Once the workers arrived at the factory, the debts somehow always grew. Extra fees for food, housing, transportation. The numbers never added up, but it didn't matter. The workers were trapped. "The ones in chains are the ones who tried to run," Krit explained. His hand shook as he spoke. "They make examples of them. Show the rest of us what happens if we try to leave." Jennifer met a woman named Dara who'd been held at the factory for 2 years. She'd finally been released when she became too sick to work. She was still thin and weak, her eyes hollow. She told Jennifer about the long hours, the beatings, the constant fear. She also told her about May. "She was new when I left, maybe 6 months there," Dara said. "Young, quiet, she cried a lot at first. They all do. But then she stopped crying. That's when you know someone's given up." Each story Jennifer heard made her more determined and more afraid. Determined to save May and the others. Afraid of what might happen if they failed. Detective Pravat worked his own angles. He quietly gathered intelligence on the factory owner. The man's name was Narang, and he ran several businesses, all of them probably fronts for trafficking. Pravat discovered connections to a larger network that moved workers across 3 countries. This wasn't just one bad factory. It was part of something much bigger. They also learned more about May. She was 16 years old, though she looked younger. She'd been sold by her uncle after her parents died. The uncle had gambling debts. May was the payment. She'd been at the factory for almost a year now. The chain had been added after she tried to escape twice. Jennifer lay awake at night thinking about May, 16 years old and already treated like she was disposable. Like she was property instead of a person. It made Jennifer angry in a way she'd never been angry before. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger. The cold, focused kind that didn't go away. She reached out to international organizations for help. The response was frustratingly slow. Everyone had procedures, protocols, proper channels. Jennifer understood why these things existed, but every day of waiting meant another day May spent in chains. A lawyer from an international human rights group finally got involved. Her name was Lynn, and she was sharp and no nonsense. She reviewed all the evidence Jennifer and Pravat had gathered. It's good, Lynn said, but we need more. We need to prove Narang knew these workers were being held against their will. Right now, he can claim he bought their contracts legally and didn't know about the conditions. We need evidence of his direct involvement. How do we get that? Jennifer asked. Lynn smiled grimly. We need someone to go undercover, someone to apply for a job through one of his labor brokers and document the entire process, someone who can get inside and gather evidence. Jennifer knew what Lynn was suggesting before she even finished speaking. I'll do it. Pravat shook his head immediately. Too dangerous. If they figure out who you are, then we find someone else to do it, Jennifer interrupted. But we need that evidence. Without it, May stays in chains. They debated for hours. Eventually, they agreed on a compromise. They'd try to find a volunteer who could go undercover, someone local who knew the language and culture, someone brave enough to walk into that factory knowing what went on inside. It took 3 days to find someone willing. Her name was Aom, and she'd lost her sister to a trafficking ring 5 years ago. She'd been looking for a way to fight back ever since. When Lynn explained what they needed, Aom agreed without hesitation. I'll do it for my sister, she said quietly, and for all the others. They spent a week preparing Aom. She wore a hidden camera disguised as a button. She memorized a cover story. She practiced staying calm under pressure. Jennifer watched her prepare and felt a mixture of admiration and guilt. Am was risking everything for people she'd never met. The day Am went to meet the labor broker, Jennifer could barely breathe. She sat in a van with Pravat and Lynn, listening through Aom's wire. They heard her talk to the broker, heard him make promises about good wages and comfortable housing, heard him ask for her ID and tell her she'd be transported to the factory tomorrow. We've got him on false advertising at least, Lynn whispered, but we need more. That night, Jennifer couldn't sleep at all. She kept thinking about Aom walking into that factory, about May still chained in the corner, about all the others trapped in the darkness. Tomorrow everything would change. One way or another, they'd get the evidence they needed. And then they could finally take action. Jennifer stared at her phone at the photo of May with her desperate eyes. Hold on, she whispered to the image. We're coming. Just hold on a little longer. Am's footage changed everything. The hidden camera captured the entire process. The labor broker's false promises, the van ride to the factory with locked doors, the moment they took her identification papers, the contract she was forced to sign that claimed she owed them thousands for transportation and fees she never agreed to. Most importantly, it captured Narang himself explaining the system. He walked Aom through the factory, showing her where she'd work. The camera caught him walking past May without a second glance, as if a chained teenager was just another piece of equipment. You'll work until your debt is paid, Narang told Aom on camera. How long that takes depends on you. Work hard, no problems. Try to leave and your debt grows. Simple. When Aom signaled that she felt unsafe and needed extraction, Pravat moved in with 2 officers he trusted. They arrested the labor broker and got Aom out before she'd spent even one night at the factory. She was shaken but unharmed. Lynn watched the footage 3 times, making notes. When she finally looked up, she was smiling. This is it. This is what we needed. We can prosecute. But Jennifer had learned that having evidence and getting justice were 2 very different things. The first problem came immediately. When Pravat tried to get a warrant to raid the factory, his superior officer denied it. No explanation. Just a flat refusal. When Pravat pushed back, he was told to drop the investigation entirely. Someone got to him, Pravat told Jennifer over the phone. He sounded exhausted. Narang must have heard we were building a case. He's calling in favors, Jennifer wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and called Lynn. What do we do now? We go higher, Lynn said. And we go public. Lynn had connections with international law enforcement agencies. She submitted the evidence to Interpol and to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. She also reached out to journalists, carefully selected ones who wouldn't publish the story until the victims were safe, but would apply pressure on local authorities. The international attention worked. Within 3 days, a joint task force was formed. Federal police from the capital, international observers, and representatives from several humanitarian organizations. The investigation was taken out of local hands and elevated to the national level, but it still wasn't fast enough. Every day that passed was another day May and the others remained trapped. Jennifer felt the weight of it constantly. She'd wake up thinking about it, go to sleep thinking about it, Sometimes she'd lie awake wondering if May even knew that people were fighting for her, or if she'd given up believing that rescue was possible. Narong's lawyers appeared almost immediately. Expensive lawyers from the city who filed motion after motion, delays, procedural challenges, requests for evidence review. Every trick in the book to slow things down. They're hoping we'll give up, Lynn explained during one of their strategy meetings. Or that they'll have time to move the victims and destroy evidence. We need to move faster, Jennifer said. What if we leak the story to the press now? Force their hand? Pravat shook his head. Too risky. If Narong knows we're about to raid the factory, those workers could disappear. Or worse, so they waited. And it was the hardest thing Jennifer had ever done. During this time, strange things started happening. Jennifer's hotel room was broken into, though nothing was taken. Just a warning, she started getting threatening phone calls from unknown numbers. Someone followed her through the market one day, staying just close enough for her to know she was being watched. Pravat told her it was Narong's people trying to scare her off. You should go home, he said. We can handle it from here. You've done enough, but Jennifer refused. I saw her eyes, she said simply. I can't leave until she's free. Lynn arranged for security, a former military officer named Thaksin, who'd worked protection details before. He was quiet and professional, and his presence made Jennifer feel safer. But it also made the danger feel more real. The legal battle dragged on for weeks. Narong's lawyers argued that the undercover operation was entrapment, that the evidence was obtained illegally, that their client was a legitimate businessman being persecuted for political reasons. None of it was true, but it all took time to disprove. Meanwhile, Lynn and her team built their case stronger. They tracked financial records showing Narong had purchased contracts for over 100 workers in the past 5 years. They found testimony from 23 former workers willing to testify about the conditions. They documented everything in excruciating detail. Jennifer spent her days helping with the investigation and her nights thinking about May. She'd learned more about the girl's story. May had been a good student before her parents died. She'd wanted to be a teacher. She'd had friends and dreams and a normal life. All of that had been stolen from her. One evening, Jennifer sat in her hotel room staring at May's photo. She'd looked at it so many times that she'd memorized every detail. The way May's hair fell over her shoulder, the slight slump in her posture, the emptiness in those desperate eyes. I won't let you down, Jennifer whispered to the photo. I promise. Finally, after 6 weeks of legal battles, they got the authorization they needed. The Joint Task Force was approved to conduct a raid. The date was set for 3 days later. Those 3 days felt like 3 years. Jennifer checked her phone constantly, terrified she'd get a call saying Narong had been tipped off, that the workers had been moved, that they were too late. Pravat assured her that only a handful of people knew about the raid. The information was compartmentalized. Everything was planned down to the minute. They'd move at dawn when the factory was fully staffed. They'd have medical personnel standing by. They'd have social workers ready to help the victims. The night before the raid, Jennifer couldn't eat. She sat in her hotel room with Lynn, going over the plan one more time. Tomorrow this ends, Lynn said. Tomorrow May goes free. Jennifer wanted to believe it. But she'd seen how many things could go wrong. How many times they'd been blocked and delayed. She wouldn't let herself hope too much. Not yet. She lay in bed that night watching the ceiling fan spin in the darkness. Somewhere out there, May was probably lying awake too, not knowing that tomorrow would be the day. Not knowing that people she'd never met had been fighting for her for months. Jennifer closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would be the most important day of this entire mission. Tomorrow, they'd finally storm that factory and break those chains. Tomorrow, if everything went right, May would take her first steps toward freedom. Jennifer just hoped they weren't too late. That May's spirit wasn't too broken. That the girl with the desperate eyes still had enough hope left to believe in rescue. Please hold on, Jennifer whispered into the darkness. Just one more night. Hold on for one more night. The morning arrived with gray skies and heavy clouds. Jennifer had barely slept 3 hours. She met the task force at a staging area 5 kilometers from the factory. There were 20 officers, 4 medical personnel, 3 social workers, and representatives from 2 international organizations. Everyone wore serious expressions and moved with quiet efficiency. Commander Somfong led the briefing. He was a career officer with the federal police, brought in specifically because he had no local connections that Narong could exploit. He spread a map of the factory on the table. "We go in fast and clean," he said. "Secure all exits first. Nobody gets out until we've identified everyone inside. Medical team enters immediately after we secure the building. Social workers follow. We treat everyone inside as potential victims until proven otherwise." Jennifer wasn't allowed to go in with the first wave. Lynn had been firm about that, but they'd arranged for her to enter with the social workers. She'd be one of the first civilians inside. The convoy left at 5:30 in the morning. 6 vehicles moving through the quiet countryside as the sun began to rise. Jennifer rode with Lynn and the social workers. Nobody spoke. The tension was thick enough to touch. When they were 1 kilometer away, the police vehicles accelerated and raced ahead. The plan was surprise. Get inside before anyone could react, before workers could be hidden or evidence destroyed. Jennifer's vehicle stopped at the factory gate behind the police units. Through the windshield, she watched officers pour into the building. She could hear shouting, commands being given, the sound of doors being forced open. Then, for a long moment, nothing. Just waiting. Jennifer's heart hammered in her chest. Her palms were sweating. This was it. After months of investigation, weeks of legal battles, countless sleepless nights, this was finally it. Commander Somfong appeared at the vehicle and nodded. "Building secure. You can come in now." Jennifer climbed out on shaky legs. The factory looked different in the early morning light. Smaller somehow, less threatening. Just a rundown building with peeling paint and broken windows. Hard to believe so much suffering happened inside something so ordinary. She followed the social workers through the main entrance. The scene inside was chaos. Workers huddled in groups, some crying, others just looking confused and frightened. Officers were going person to person, trying to explain what was happening. Medical personnel were doing quick assessments, identifying anyone who needed immediate attention. Jennifer scanned the room desperately, looking for May. Her eyes went to the back corner where she'd seen the girl before. She was there, still chained, still at the cutting table. But now she was standing, pressing herself against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't understand what was happening. Didn't know if this raid meant rescue or something worse. Jennifer moved through the crowd without thinking. She barely heard Lynn calling her name. She just walked straight to that back corner, her eyes locked on May's terrified face. "May?" Jennifer said softly when she was close enough. "My name is Jennifer. I'm here to help you." May didn't respond, just stared at her with those same desperate eyes Jennifer had seen months ago. But now there was something else too. Confusion, disbelief, maybe the smallest flicker of hope that she was too afraid to let herself feel. "I saw you," Jennifer continued, kneeling down near the chain. 2 months ago. I saw you and I promised myself I'd get you out. I'm sorry it took so long." A police officer approached with bolt cutters. May flinched back and Jennifer held up a hand. "It's okay," she said gently. "He's going to cut the chain. You're free. You're really free." The officer knelt and positioned the cutters around the chain. One squeeze, a sharp crack, and the chain fell away. May looked down at her ankle at the space where the chain had been. She reached down slowly and touched the metal cuff still locked around her leg. Then she looked up at Jennifer and her face crumpled. She didn't make a sound. Just silent tears streaming down her face as her whole body began to shake. Jennifer moved closer and carefully, slowly, put her arms around her. May collapsed against her, sobbing without sound, her thin frame trembling. "You're safe now," Jennifer whispered. "You're safe. It's over." Around them, the rescue operation continued. Officers found 18 workers total who'd been held against their will. Some were chained like May, others were locked in back rooms. A few had been kept in a storage building behind the main factory. Medical personnel moved through the freed workers, treating injuries, malnutrition, infections, old wounds that had never been properly cared for. One young man had a broken arm that had healed wrong because he'd never seen a doctor. A woman had burns covering her hands from working with chemicals without protection. Narong was found trying to escape through a back exit. He was arrested along with 3 of his supervisors. They found documents in his office, records of workers purchased, lists of debts that kept growing. Everything Lynn needed to prosecute. Jennifer stayed with May through it all. She didn't leave her side as medical staff examined her. didn't let go of her hand when the social workers tried to explain what would happen next. May didn't speak, just held on to Jennifer like she was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. They removed the cuff from May's ankle. The skin underneath was raw and scarred. The doctor cleaned and bandaged it gently while May stared at the wall. "She's in shock," the doctor explained quietly to Jennifer. "It's normal. It might take days or weeks for her to process what just happened. Just stay close if you can. Familiar faces help." The rescued workers were loaded into vans to be taken to a care facility. It was a place run by a non-profit organization that specialized in helping trafficking survivors, safe, comfortable, nothing like the factory. They'd just left. Jennifer rode in the van with May and 3 other girls. They sat in silence, looking out the windows like they couldn't quite believe they were actually leaving. One girl kept touching the door handle as if making sure it would open, that she wasn't locked in. When they arrived at the facility, the workers were greeted by staff members who smiled and spoke gently. They were shown to clean rooms with real beds, given fresh clothes, offered food that wasn't scraps or leftovers. May walked through it all like she was in a dream. Jennifer could see her struggling to understand that this was real, that it wasn't some cruel trick. That evening, after May had been fed and bathed and given time to rest, Jennifer sat with her in a quiet room. May was wearing clean clothes that were too big for her thin frame. Her hair was washed. The bandage on her ankle was bright white against her skin. "Do you understand what happened today?" Jennifer asked gently. May looked at her for a long moment. Then finally she spoke. Her voice was rough from months of barely using it. "The chain is gone." "Yes," Jennifer said. "The chain is gone. You're free. You never have to go back there." May's eyes filled with tears again. "Is this real?" Jennifer felt her own eyes burning. "Yes, this is real. You're safe now. I promise you're safe." May was quiet for another moment. Then she whispered something so softly that Jennifer almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." 2 simple words. But they carried the weight of months of suffering, months of hopelessness, and now, finally, the beginning of freedom. Jennifer reached out and took May's hand. "You're going to be okay. It's going to take time, but you're going to be okay." She didn't know if May believed her. She didn't even know if she believed it herself. The road ahead would be long and difficult. May had been through trauma that would take years to heal. There would be setbacks and struggles and dark days, but tonight the chain was broken. The factory was behind them. And for the first time in a year, May would sleep in a real bed in a safe place as a free person. It was only the first step. But sometimes Jennifer thought the first step was the most important one. The first week at the care facility was the hardest. May barely spoke. She ate mechanically when food was placed in front of her but never asked for anything. She slept fitfully, often waking up in the middle of the night believing she was back at the factory. Jennifer visited every day. The facility staff said it was unusual, that most aid workers moved on to the next crisis once the rescue was complete. But Jennifer couldn't leave, not yet. Maybe not ever. On the 3rd day, she found May sitting in the garden staring at her bare ankle where the cuff had been. The skin was healing, but the scars would remain. Physical reminders of what she'd endured. "Does it hurt?" Jennifer asked, sitting down beside her. May shook her head. "It feels strange, light, like something is missing." Jennifer understood. The chain had been a prison, but it had also been familiar. Now May had to learn how to exist without it, how to make choices, how to walk through doors that weren't locked. It was harder than it sounded. Dr. Chanita, the facility's trauma counselor, explained it to Jennifer one afternoon. She's been in survival mode for so long that her brain doesn't know how to process safety. Every instinct she has is telling her to be afraid, to comply, to not make waves. Teaching her that she's actually free will take time. The facility housed 12 of the 18 workers rescued from the factory. The others had chosen to return to their families immediately. But for May and these 12, there was nowhere to go. Their families had sold them or couldn't be found. This facility was all they had. Jennifer watched them slowly begin to emerge from their shells. Small things at first. A girl named Suda started asking for second helpings at meals. A young man named Boone began spending time in the recreation room, cautiously touching the books and games like he couldn't believe he was allowed to use them. May's progress was slower. She followed routines but showed little emotion. She attended counseling sessions but rarely spoke. The facility staff was patient, but Jennifer could see their concern. May was stuck somewhere between the factory and freedom, unable to fully embrace either. 2 weeks after the rescue, Jennifer brought something with her to their daily visit. A sketchbook and colored pencils. She'd heard from the case files that May used to draw before everything happened. "I thought you might like these," Jennifer said, placing them on the table between them. May looked at the sketchbook like it was something dangerous. She didn't touch it. "You don't have to use them," Jennifer said quickly. "I just thought maybe you'd want to." They sat in silence for a while. Then slowly May reached out and opened the sketchbook to the first blank page. She picked up a pencil. Her hand shook slightly as she touched it to the paper. She didn't draw anything that day, just held the pencil. But it was something. The next day, Jennifer found her in the garden again. This time, the sketchbook was open on her lap. She'd drawn something, just simple lines and shapes. A square, a chain. Nothing else. Jennifer felt her heart break a little. But she smiled. "That's good. You're expressing what you feel. Dr. Chanita says that's important." Over the next few weeks, May drew more. The images were dark and painful to look at. Chains and locked doors and faceless people. But slowly, other things started appearing. A flower, the sun, a bird. "She's processing," Dr. Chanita explained. "The art is helping her work through the trauma in ways words can't." Not all the survivors were recovering at the same pace. One girl, Ploy, seemed to be doing well, but then suddenly stopped eating. She'd lost too much weight by the time staff convinced her to talk to Dr. Chanita. She was terrified that if she ate too much, she'd use up her welcome, that they'd send her back to work off the debt of the food she consumed. "We all carry the chains with us," Boone said during a group session that Jennifer was allowed to observe. "Even when they cut them off, we still feel them." The group sessions were difficult to watch. 18 people who'd been through hell, trying to figure out how to be human again, how to trust, how to hope, how to imagine futures that didn't involve pain and fear. But there were good moments too. The day Suda laughed at a joke someone told. The afternoon, Boone played a game with some of the younger survivors. The evening, May showed Jennifer a drawing she'd made of the sunrise. "I forgot the sky could look like this," May said quietly. "At the factory, we barely saw outside. A month after the rescue, something changed." Jennifer arrived for her usual visit to find May waiting for her by the entrance. It was the first time May had ever sought her out. "Can we walk?" May asked. They walked through the facility gardens in silence for a while. Then May spoke. "Why did you come back? After you saw me that first time. You could have just left." Jennifer thought about how to answer. "Because I saw your eyes. And I saw someone who was asking for help. I couldn't just walk away from that. But you didn't know me. I didn't have to know you. You needed help. That was enough." May was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised Jennifer. "I want to help others. Like you helped me." "That's good," Jennifer said carefully. "But first you need to help yourself. You need to heal. How long does that take?" Jennifer wished she had a good answer. "I don't know. Maybe a long time. Maybe forever. Healing isn't about going back to who you were before. It's about becoming someone new. Someone who can live with what happened but isn't controlled by it." Over the following weeks, May became more engaged in her recovery. She started speaking up in group sessions. She began helping with small tasks around the facility, organizing the art supplies, helping younger survivors with their drawings. She was finding purpose again. But there were still hard days. Days when she wouldn't leave her room. Days when the nightmares were so bad she couldn't function. Days when the weight of everything that had happened felt too heavy to carry. On one of those days, Jennifer found her sitting in the dark in her room, crying silently. "I thought I'd feel happy," May said through tears. "I'm free. The chain is gone. But I don't feel happy. I just feel broken." Jennifer sat down beside her. "You're not broken. You're healing. And healing hurts sometimes. It's okay to not be okay. Will I ever be normal again?" "I don't know what normal means," Jennifer said honestly. "But I know you're strong. Strong enough to survive. Strong enough to hope for better days. And that's more than enough." 3 months after the rescue, the facility held a small celebration. It was the anniversary of the facility's founding, but it felt like more than that. It felt like a marker of how far they'd all come. May stood up during the gathering and spoke. It was the first time she'd addressed everyone. Her voice was still quiet, but it was steady. 3 months ago, I was chained to a floor. I thought I would die there. I thought nobody cared that I existed. But I was wrong. People did care. People fought for me. And now I'm here. I'm free. And I'm learning that free doesn't just mean no chains. It means having choices, having hope, having a future. She looked at Jennifer. Someone once told me she wouldn't give up on me. And she didn't, so I'm not giving up on myself either. The room was silent for a moment. Then everyone began to clap. Not loud or dramatic, just quiet acknowledgement of courage and survival. That night, as Jennifer drove back to her hotel, she thought about how far they'd come. The rescue had been just one day, but recovery was ongoing. It would continue long after Jennifer returned home, long after the news cameras stopped caring about this story. But for the first time since this all began, Jennifer felt like maybe it would be okay. Maybe May would find her way forward. Maybe the girl with the desperate eyes would learn to smile again. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be fast. But it was possible. And sometimes, Jennifer thought, possibility was enough. The morning arrived with gray skies and heavy clouds. Jennifer had barely slept 3 hours. She met the task force at a staging area 5 kilometers from the factory. There were 20 officers, 4 medical personnel, 3 social workers, and representatives from 2 international organizations. Everyone wore serious expressions and moved with quiet efficiency. Commander Somfong led the briefing. He was a career officer with the federal police, brought in specifically because he had no local connections that Narong could exploit. He spread a map of the factory on the table. "We go in fast and clean," he said. "Secure all exits first. Nobody gets out until we've identified everyone inside. Medical team enters immediately after we secure the building. Social workers follow. We treat everyone inside as potential victims until proven otherwise." Jennifer wasn't allowed to go in with the first wave. Lynn had been firm about that, but they'd arranged for her to enter with the social workers. She'd be one of the first civilians inside. The convoy left at 5:30 in the morning. 6 vehicles moving through the quiet countryside as the sun began to rise. Jennifer rode with Lynn and the social workers. Nobody spoke. The tension was thick enough to touch. When they were 1 kilometer away, the police vehicles accelerated and raced ahead. The plan was surprise. Get inside before anyone could react, before workers could be hidden or evidence destroyed. Jennifer's vehicle stopped at the factory gate behind the police units. Through the windshield, she watched officers pour into the building. She could hear shouting, commands being given, the sound of doors being forced open. Then, for a long moment, nothing. Just waiting. Jennifer's heart hammered in her chest. Her palms were sweating. This was it. After months of investigation, weeks of legal battles, countless sleepless nights, this was finally it. Commander Somfong appeared at the vehicle and nodded. "Building secure. You can come in now." Jennifer climbed out on shaky legs. The factory looked different in the early morning light. Smaller somehow, less threatening. Just a rundown building with peeling paint and broken windows. Hard to believe so much suffering happened inside something so ordinary. She followed the social workers through the main entrance. The scene inside was chaos. Workers huddled in groups, some crying, others just looking confused and frightened. Officers were going person to person, trying to explain what was happening. Medical personnel were doing quick assessments, identifying anyone who needed immediate attention. Jennifer scanned the room desperately, looking for May. Her eyes went to the back corner where she'd seen the girl before. She was there, still chained, still at the cutting table. But now she was standing, pressing herself against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't understand what was happening. Didn't know if this raid meant rescue or something worse. Jennifer moved through the crowd without thinking. She barely heard Lynn calling her name. She just walked straight to that back corner, her eyes locked on May's terrified face. "May?" Jennifer said softly when she was close enough. "My name is Jennifer. I'm here to help you." May didn't respond, just stared at her with those same desperate eyes Jennifer had seen months ago. But now there was something else too. Confusion, disbelief, maybe the smallest flicker of hope that she was too afraid to let herself feel. "I saw you," Jennifer continued, kneeling down near the chain, 2 months ago. "I saw you and I promised myself I'd get you out. I'm sorry it took so long." A police officer approached with bolt cutters. May flinched back and Jennifer held up a hand. "It's okay," she said gently. "He's going to cut the chain. You're free. You're really free." The officer knelt and positioned the cutters around the chain. One squeeze, a sharp crack, and the chain fell away. May looked down at her ankle at the space where the chain had been. She reached down slowly and touched the metal cuff still locked around her leg. Then she looked up at Jennifer and her face crumpled. She didn't make a sound. Just silent tears streaming down her face as her whole body began to shake. Jennifer moved closer and carefully, slowly, put her arms around her. May collapsed against her, sobbing without sound, her thin frame trembling. "You're safe now," Jennifer whispered. "You're safe. It's over." Around them, the rescue operation continued. Officers found 18 workers total who'd been held against their will. Some were chained like May, others were locked in back rooms. A few had been kept in a storage building behind the main factory. Medical personnel moved through the freed workers, treating injuries, malnutrition, infections, old wounds that had never been properly cared for. One young man had a broken arm that had healed wrong because he'd never seen a doctor. A woman had burns covering her hands from working with chemicals without protection. Narang was found trying to escape through a back exit. He was arrested along with 3 of his supervisors. They found documents in his office, records of workers purchased, lists of debts that kept growing. Everything Lynn needed to prosecute. Jennifer stayed with May through it all. She didn't leave her side as medical staff examined her. Didn't let go of her hand when the social workers tried to explain what would happen next. May didn't speak, just held on to Jennifer like she was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. They removed the cuff from May's ankle. The skin underneath was raw and scarred. The doctor cleaned and bandaged it gently while May stared at the wall. "She's in shock," the doctor explained quietly to Jennifer. "It's normal. It might take days or weeks for her to process what just happened. Just stay close if you can. Familiar faces help." The rescued workers were loaded into vans to be taken to a care facility. It was a place run by a non-profit organization that specialized in helping trafficking survivors, safe, comfortable, nothing like the factory. They'd just left. Jennifer rode in the van with May and 3 other girls. They sat in silence, looking out the windows like they couldn't quite believe they were actually leaving. One girl kept touching the door handle as if making sure it would open, that she wasn't locked in. When they arrived at the facility, the workers were greeted by staff members who smiled and spoke gently. They were shown to clean rooms with real beds, given fresh clothes, offered food that wasn't scraps or leftovers. May walked through it all like she was in a dream. Jennifer could see her struggling to understand that this was real, that it wasn't some cruel trick. That evening, after May had been fed and bathed and given time to rest, Jennifer sat with her in a quiet room. May was wearing clean clothes that were too big for her thin frame. Her hair was washed. The bandage on her ankle was bright white against her skin. "Do you understand what happened today?" Jennifer asked gently. May looked at her for a long moment. Then finally she spoke. Her voice was rough from months of barely using it. "The chain is gone." "Yes," Jennifer said. "The chain is gone. You're free. You never have to go back there." May's eyes filled with tears again. "Is this real?" Jennifer felt her own eyes burning. "Yes, this is real. You're safe now. I promise you're safe." May was quiet for another moment. Then she whispered something so softly that Jennifer almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." 2 simple words. But they carried the weight of months of suffering, months of hopelessness, and now, finally, the beginning of freedom. Jennifer reached out and took May's hand. "You're going to be okay. It's going to take time, but you're going to be okay." She didn't know if May believed her. She didn't even know if she believed it herself. The road ahead would be long and difficult. May had been through trauma that would take years to heal. There would be setbacks and struggles and dark days, but tonight the chain was broken. The factory was behind them. And for the first time in a year, May would sleep in a real bed in a safe place as a free person. It was only the first step. But sometimes Jennifer thought the first step was the most important one. The trial date was set for 6 months after the rescue. Lynn had worked tirelessly to build the prosecution's case. Financial records, testimony from labor brokers, evidence from the factory itself, and most importantly, statements from the survivors. But there was a problem. For the strongest possible conviction, they needed survivors to testify in court, to face Narang and his people, to tell their stories in front of judges and lawyers and a gallery full of strangers. Many of the survivors refused immediately. The thought of being in the same room with Narang again was too much. Even from behind bars, he still had power over them. The power of fear. Lynn approached May about testifying 2 months before the trial. Jennifer was with her when she asked. "I know this is difficult," Lynn said gently, "but your testimony could make the difference. You were chained. You tried to escape twice. Your story shows intent to imprison. It shows he knew exactly what he was doing." May looked down at her hands. The scars on her ankle had faded but were still visible. "What if I can't do it? What if I see him and I can't speak?" "Then you tried," Jennifer said. "No one will blame you. But if you can do it, if you can tell the truth about what happened, you'll be helping not just yourself but everyone else he hurt." May thought about it for 3 days. Jennifer didn't push her. This had to be May's decision. Finally, May came to Jennifer's hotel room late one evening. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll testify. Not for him, for me, so I can prove to myself that he doesn't control me anymore." They prepared carefully. Lynn conducted practice sessions teaching May how court worked, how to answer questions clearly, how to stay calm under pressure. Dr. Shanita worked with her on managing anxiety and trauma responses. Boone agreed to testify too. So did Suda and 2 others. 5 survivors willing to stand up and speak their truth. The night before the trial, Jennifer couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what the next few days would bring. The defense would be brutal. They'd try to discredit the survivors, suggest they were lying or exaggerating. That's how these cases always went. She thought about calling May, but it was past midnight. Instead, she sent a text. "You're braver than you know. I'm proud of you." A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I'm scared." "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Jennifer typed back. "It means being scared and doing it anyway." The courthouse was modern and imposing. Jennifer met May and the other survivors outside. They all looked nervous but determined. Lynn briefed them one more time, then they entered. The courtroom was packed. Press, international observers, representatives from various organizations. Narong sat at the defense table with his expensive lawyers looking confident. Like he didn't believe any of this would actually touch him. The first day was procedural. Opening statements. Jury selection. Jennifer watched Narong carefully. He never once looked at the survivors. They were invisible to him. Objects, not people. The second day, the prosecution began presenting evidence. Financial records showing how Narong purchased worker contracts. Photos from the factory showing the chains and locked rooms. Testimony from the arresting officers about what they found during the raid. Narong's lawyers objected to everything. They challenged the legality of the raid, the authenticity of the documents, the credibility of the witnesses. They were good lawyers doing what good lawyers do, but it was hard to watch. On the third day, the survivors began to testify. Boone went first. He spoke clearly about being recruited with false promises, about arriving at the factory and having his identification taken, about working 14-hour days for no pay, about being beaten when he asked to leave. The defense attorney cross-examined him aggressively. "Isn't it true you signed a contract agreeing to these terms? Isn't it true you were working off a debt you owed?" "The debt wasn't real," Boone said firmly. "They made up charges. I never agreed to be locked in." Suda testified next. Her voice shook, but she got through it. She described the conditions, the lack of medical care, the fear that permeated everything. Then it was May's turn. Jennifer sat in the gallery as May walked to the witness stand. She looked so small up there, so young, but she lifted her chin and placed her hand on the book to take the oath. Lynn started with easy questions. May's name, her age, where she was from, building confidence before the difficult parts. "Can you tell the court how you came to work at the factory?" Lynn asked. May took a deep breath. "My uncle sold me after my parents died.
He had debts.
I was 16 years old. They took me to the factory and told me I had to work until the debt was paid. Did you want to go?" "No, I had no choice." "What were the conditions at the factory?" May described it all. The long hours, the poor food, the violence. Her voice remained steady even as she talked about the worst parts. "You tried to escape?" Lynn prompted. "Twice. The first time they caught me before I reached the road. They beat me and locked me in a storage room for 3 days with no food. The second time I got further, but they found me in the village. That's when they put the chain on my ankle." The courtroom was completely silent. Even Narong's lawyers didn't interrupt. "Can you show the court your ankle?" Lynn asked gently. May stood and lifted the hem of her pants. The scars were clearly visible even from a distance. A permanent reminder of what had been done to her. How long were you chained? 7 months. Until the day of the rescue. And during that time, could you leave? No, the chain was just long enough to reach my workstation. That was all. Lynn finished her questions, and then the defense attorney stood up. He was an older man with gray hair and a sharp suit. He approached May with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss May, you say you were forced to work. But you did receive food and shelter, didn't you? Yes, but so you weren't working for nothing. You were receiving compensation. It wasn't compensation. It was survival. But you chose to stay after the first escape attempt, didn't you? May's hands tightened on the edge of the witness stand. I was beaten. Locked up, chained. That's not a choice. Yet you didn't try to escape again after the chain was applied. Jennifer could see May struggling. This was the trap. Making it seem like she'd accepted her situation, but May surprised everyone. I stopped trying because I wanted to live. I thought if I survived long enough, maybe someone would help me, and someone did. She looked directly at Narong for the first time. You took a year of my life. You chained me like an animal, but you didn't break me. I'm here. I'm free, and I'm telling everyone what you did. The defense attorney tried a few more questions but couldn't shake her testimony. When May stepped down, she was trembling, but she'd done it. The trial continued for 2 more weeks. More evidence. More testimony. Expert witnesses. The defense tried to paint Narong as a businessman who didn't know about the conditions at his factory. They claimed he was being scapegoated, but the evidence was overwhelming. The photos, the financial records, the testimony from 5 survivors who all told the same story, and most damning, the video footage from Aom's hidden camera showing Narong personally explaining the debt bondage system. Finally, closing arguments. Lynn spoke passionately about justice for victims, about holding traffickers accountable, about sending a message that this wouldn't be tolerated. The defense argued reasonable doubt, lack of direct evidence of Narong's personal involvement, alternative explanations for everything. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 long days where Jennifer barely ate or slept. May and the other survivors waited together at the facility, supporting each other. Then the call came. Verdict reached. They rushed back to the courthouse. The room was packed again. Jennifer sat with May, holding her hand. The jury foreman stood. In the case of the People versus Narong, we find the defendant guilty of human trafficking, guilty of forced labor, guilty of false imprisonment. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Narong's face went pale. His lawyers immediately began calling for appeals. But it didn't matter. He was guilty, officially, legally guilty. May burst into tears. Not sad tears, release, relief, vindication. Jennifer hugged her as she sobbed. It's over, Jennifer whispered. It's really over. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. 25 years in prison, forfeiture of all assets, restitution to be paid to victims. It wasn't enough. No sentence could be enough. But it was something. Outside the courthouse, May stood with the other survivors who'd testified. Media cameras surrounded them, but Lynn had prepared them for this. A reporter asked May how she felt. She thought for a moment, then spoke clearly. I feel like I got my voice back. He took everything from me, but I took something back today. My story, my truth. And that's something he can never take away again. That evening, Jennifer and May sat on a bench outside the care facility, watching the sunset. Thank you, May said, for everything. You did this, Jennifer replied. You were brave enough to testify, strong enough to face him. We did it together, May said. All of us. Everyone who helped. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned orange and pink. It was over. The chain was broken. The trial was won. Justice, imperfect as it was, had been served. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight they could rest knowing they'd won. 6 months after the trial, Jennifer sat in her supervisor's office back home. She'd returned to her regular work, but something had changed. She couldn't stop thinking about May and the others, about all the people still trapped in situations just like theirs. You want to do what? Her supervisor asked, leaning back in his chair. I want to set up an education and support program for trafficking survivors. Help them get skills, find jobs, rebuild their lives. Not just rescue them and move on. Actually help them recover long term. Her supervisor was quiet for a moment. That's a big undertaking. It would require funding, staff, facilities, I know. But I can't stop thinking about how many survivors get rescued and then fall through the cracks. They're free, but then what? They have no education, no job skills, trauma they're dealing with. We need to do better. You're right, he said finally. Write me a proposal. Let's see what we can do. Jennifer threw herself into the project. She researched other programs, talked to experts, created curriculum ideas. She video called May weekly to get input on what survivors actually needed. May was doing better. She'd started taking classes at a local school, catching up on the education she'd missed. It was hard. She was older than the other students and had gaps in her knowledge. But she was determined. I want to finish school, May told Jennifer during one call. Maybe even go to university someday. What would you study? May smiled. It was still a rare thing, that smile, but it was becoming more frequent. Social work. I want to help people like me. People who've been through bad things and need someone who understands. Jennifer felt pride swell in her chest. You'd be amazing at that. But the path forward wasn't smooth. May had setbacks. A bad week where nightmares kept her up every night. A panic attack triggered by seeing someone who looked like one of the factory supervisors. Days when depression made getting out of bed feel impossible. Dr. Chanita continued working with her. Trauma isn't linear, she explained to Jennifer. Some days will be good. Some will be terrible. The goal isn't to eliminate the bad days. It's to give her tools to get through them. Meanwhile, Jennifer's proposal was approved. Her organization partnered with the care facility to create a comprehensive program. Education, vocational training, therapy, job placement assistance. Everything a survivor might need to truly rebuild. The first class started with 12 students. 8 were from Narong's factory. 4 were from other trafficking situations. They ranged in age from 16 to 24. Jennifer flew back to help launch the program. She wasn't a teacher, but she could coordinate and ensure everything ran smoothly. They'd hired local instructors, people who understood the culture and language, people who were patient with students who'd been through trauma. May enrolled immediately. She took classes in basic education to fill the gaps from the years she'd missed. She also took a special interest in art therapy, using the drawing skills she'd developed during recovery. Art saved me, she told the class one day. When I couldn't find words for what I felt, I could draw it. It helped me process things I didn't even know I was feeling. Other students started opening up too. Boone discovered he had a talent for carpentry. Suda excelled at math. Each person found something that sparked their interest, something that made them feel capable and valuable. But not everyone succeeded right away. One student dropped out after 2 weeks, overwhelmed by the structure and expectations. Another struggled with addiction issues that made learning difficult. The program wasn't a magic solution. It was just one more tool in a long recovery process. Jennifer learned to accept that. Not every story would have a perfect ending. Some people would struggle for years. Some might never fully recover. But that didn't mean the effort wasn't worthwhile. After 3 months, the program held its first graduation. 5 students completed the basic education portion and were moving on to vocational training. It was a small ceremony, just staff and students and a few family members who'd reconnected with their loved ones. May received her certificate with shaking hands. She'd not only completed the coursework, but had also started volunteering at the facility, helping newer residents adjust to freedom. A year ago, I thought my life was over, May said in her graduation speech. I thought I'd die chained to that floor. But I didn't die. I survived. And then I learned that surviving isn't enough. I had to learn how to live again. This program gave me the tools to do that. She looked at Jennifer in the audience. Someone once told me that healing takes time, that it's okay to not be okay. And she was right. I'm not fixed. I still have bad days. But I'm building something now. A future, a life. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have. The room applauded. Jennifer wiped tears from her eyes. This was why she did this work. Not for the dramatic rescues or the courtroom victories. For these quiet moments of transformation. For watching someone who'd been broken slowly put themselves back together. After the ceremony, May approached Jennifer. I've been thinking about something. I want to share my story more publicly. Help people understand what trafficking really looks like. Maybe prevent it from happening to others. Jennifer was cautious. That's a big step. Are you sure you're ready? I don't know if I'll ever feel ready, May admitted. but I think it's important. Too many people think trafficking is just something that happens in movies. They don't realize it's happening in their own cities, their own neighborhoods. If my story can open even one person's eyes, it's worth it. They worked together to prepare. Lynn helped them navigate the legal aspects. Dr. Chanita ensured May was psychologically prepared for the exposure. They started small. A local newspaper interview. A short video for the organization's website. The response was overwhelming. People were moved by May's story. Donations came in for the program. Other survivors reached out, saying her words had helped them feel less alone. Schools asked if she'd come speak about trafficking awareness. May was nervous before her first speaking engagement. It was at a high school, talking to students not much younger than herself. What if I mess up? What if I can't get through it? She asked Jennifer. Then you stop, take a breath, and try again. These kids don't expect perfection. They just need honesty. May told her story to 200 students that day. She talked about being 16 and losing everything. About the factory and the chain. About the rescue and the difficult recovery. She didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't make it sound easy or simple. I want you to understand something, she said at the end. This didn't happen because I was stupid or careless. It happened because there are bad people in the world who see others as things they can use. And it could happen to anyone. Your classmate. Your neighbor. Even you. She paused, looking out at all those young faces. But I also want you to know that survivors are strong. We're not broken. We're not damaged goods. We're people who went through something terrible and came out the other side. We deserve respect. We deserve support. We deserve futures. The students gave her a standing ovation. Several approached her afterward with questions or just to say thank you. One girl pulled May aside and quietly admitted she was in an abusive situation at home. May helped connect her with resources. That night, May called Jennifer. I did it. I actually did it. I knew you could, Jennifer said. How do you feel? Tired, scared, but also good. Like maybe I can make a difference. You already have, Jennifer assured her. You already have. Over the next year, May continued her education and advocacy work. She completed vocational training in counseling and social work. She became a peer counselor at the facility, working with newly rescued survivors. She spoke at schools, conferences, and community events. She also worked with Jennifer to expand the program. They added classes, created mentorship opportunities, built partnerships with businesses willing to hire survivors. The program grew from 12 students to 40, then to over 60. Not every student succeeded. Some dropped out. Some relapsed into old traumas. Some found the work too difficult. But many thrived. They got jobs, rebuilt relationships with families, went to university, created lives they'd never imagined possible. 2 years after the rescue, May stood in front of a mirror in her small apartment. It was the first time she'd lived independently since before the factory. The apartment was tiny, but it was hers, paid for with money from her part-time job at the facility. She looked at her reflection. She was 19 now, older, different. The scared girl with desperate eyes was still there somewhere, but she wasn't all May was anymore. She was also a survivor, a student, an advocate, a person with dreams and plans and hope. She touched the scars on her ankle. They'd faded more but would never completely disappear. She used to hate those scars. Now she saw them differently. Evidence that she'd survived. Proof that she was stronger than what had tried to break her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Proud of you, always. May smiled and typed back. Couldn't have done it without you. But even as she sent it, she knew that wasn't entirely true. Jennifer had helped. The program had helped. Therapy and support and education had all helped. But ultimately, May had saved herself. She'd chosen to keep going when giving up would have been easier. She'd chosen to heal, to grow, to build a life worth living, and that choice, that determination, that was all her. 3 years after the rescue, Jennifer received a call that changed everything. It was from Detective Pravat. They'd been monitoring trafficking networks in the region and discovered something disturbing. Narong's operation hadn't died with his conviction. His brother had taken over, running an even larger network from a different location. We have information about another factory, Pravat said. Similar setup. Maybe 20 workers being held. We're planning a raid and I thought you'd want to know. Jennifer didn't hesitate. I'll be on the next flight. But this time she didn't go alone. Me insisted on coming with her. I can help, May said when Jennifer tried to talk her out of it. I know what they're going through. I can talk to them in ways you can't, in ways they'll understand. Jennifer was torn. Part of her wanted to protect May from being exposed to trauma again, but another part recognized that May was no longer the scared girl she'd rescued. She was a trained counselor now, about to finish her degree in social work. She'd helped dozens of survivors through their recovery. She was qualified. She was capable. Are you sure? Jennifer asked. Being back there, seeing another factory, it might trigger things. May nodded firmly. I know. I've talked to Dr. Chanita about it. I have coping strategies. And I have you. I'll be okay. Those people in that factory need someone who understands. I can be that person. They arrived 2 days before the planned raid. The factory was located in a different province, but it might as well have been the same place. Remote. Hidden. Easy to ignore. The night before the raid, May was quiet. Jennifer found her sitting outside their hotel staring at the stars. Having second thoughts? Jennifer asked, sitting beside her. No, just remembering. 3 years ago, I was chained in a place just like where we're going tomorrow. I thought I'd die there. And now I'm going back, but this time I'm on the other side. I'm one of the rescuers. That's incredible growth, Jennifer said. You should be proud. I am. But I'm also scared. What if I freeze? What if seeing another factory breaks something inside me that I've worked so hard to fix? Jennifer took her hand. Then we deal with it. But I don't think you'll freeze. I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. And tomorrow you're going to help people who desperately need it. The raid happened at dawn. Jennifer and May went in with the social workers just like before. But this time May wasn't a victim. She was a counselor, a survivor who'd come back to help others survive. They found 23 workers, some chained, some locked in storage rooms, all terrified when the police burst in. They didn't understand this was rescue. They thought it was something worse. May moved through the chaos calmly. She approached a young girl who was pressed against a wall, shaking with fear. The girl had a chain around her ankle just like May had. Hey, May said softly in the local language. I know you're scared. I know this seems confusing. But these people are here to help. They're here to get you out. The girl just stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. May knelt down. Look at my ankle. She pulled up her pants leg, showing the scars.
See this?
3 years ago, I had a chain just like yours. I was in a factory just like this one. I was scared just like you are now. But I got out. And today I'm free. And today you're going to be free too. Something shifted in the girl's expression. A flicker of hope. Of belief. Really? Really, May promised. My name is May. What's yours? Rena. Okay, Rena, here's what's going to happen. That police officer over there is going to cut your chain. Then we're going to take you somewhere safe. Somewhere with real beds and good food and people who will help you. I'll be with you the whole time. I promise you'll be okay. When the chain was cut, Rena grabbed May's hand and didn't let go. She held on during the medical examination, during the ride to the care facility, during the initial intake process. She held on like May was the only solid thing in a world that had turned upside down. Jennifer watched May work with Rena and the others. She was patient, understanding. She knew exactly what to say because she'd been there. She'd lived it. And now she was using that experience to help others survive the same nightmare. That evening, after all the rescued workers were settled, May and Jennifer sat in the facility's garden. May looked exhausted but also somehow lighter, like she'd put down a burden she'd been carrying. How are you feeling? Jennifer asked. Tired, emotional, but good. Really good. Today mattered. We got 23 people out. 23 lives saved. You were amazing with Rena. May smiled. She reminds me of myself. Scared but trying to be brave. She's going to have a hard road ahead. They all are. But they'll make it. Just like I did. Over the next few weeks, May stayed at the facility working with the new survivors. She ran group sessions, provided one-on-one counseling, helped them understand that freedom was real and permanent, that they weren't dreaming. Rena attached herself to May completely. She followed her around, listened to her advice, tried to copy her strength. It was clear she saw May as proof that recovery was possible, that life after trafficking could be good. Will I ever feel normal again? Rena asked one day during a session. May thought about how to answer. I don't know if anyone who's been through what we've been through ever feels normal. But you'll feel okay. You'll have good days. You'll laugh. You'll have dreams. You'll build a life. It won't be the life you would have had if this never happened. But it can still be a good life, a life worth living. How do you do it? How do you seem so okay? I'm not always okay, May admitted. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still have days when I'm sad or angry about what was taken from me. But I also have purpose now. I have people I care about. I have work that matters. And I have hope. That's the biggest thing. I have hope that tomorrow will be better than today. 6 months later, Jennifer stood in an auditorium watching May receive her degree in social work. She graduated with honors. She'd written her thesis on effective recovery programs for trafficking survivors, using her own experience and the program they'd built together as case studies. After the ceremony, May found Jennifer in the crowd. I did it. You did it, Jennifer agreed, pulling her into a hug. I'm so proud of you. I have news, May said. The organization offered me a job. A real job. Working as a counselor and survivor advocate. I'll be helping run the program we started. That's amazing. Will you take it? I already accepted, May laughed. This is what I want to do with my life. Help others like me, break chains literally and figuratively. Over the next year, May became one of the most effective counselors at the facility. She understood survivors in ways no one else could. She could see through their defenses, recognize their coping mechanisms, know when to push and when to back off. She also continued speaking publicly about trafficking. Her talks became more polished but never lost their raw honesty. She appeared at international conferences, consulted with organizations around the world, became a voice for survivors who couldn't yet speak for themselves. Jennifer watched her growth with wonder and pride. The girl with desperate eyes had become a woman with purpose and power, someone who'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into a force for good. 4 years after the rescue, Jennifer and May stood together at a press conference. They were announcing an expansion of their program to 3 new countries. Funding had come from international donors moved by May's story and impressed by the program's success rates. A reporter asked May what drove her to do this work. 4 years ago, I was chained in a factory believing I would die there, May said. I thought I was invisible, that no one cared, but someone saw me. Someone fought for me. Someone refused to give up on me. And that changed everything. She looked at Jennifer. I'm doing this work because no one should have to feel invisible. No one should have to believe they're worthless. Every person in chains deserves someone who will fight for them. And every survivor deserves support to rebuild their life. That's what this program does. That's what I'll spend the rest of my life doing. That evening, they sat in May's apartment. It was bigger now. She'd decorated it with her artwork, photos of people she'd helped, evidence of a life rebuilt from ashes. Do you ever think about the factory? Jennifer asked. About the person you were then? Sometimes, May said, but less and less. That girl is still part of me. She always will be, but she's not all of me anymore. I'm so much more than what happened to me. She picked up a recent photo of herself with a group of survivors she'd helped. Everyone was smiling. This is who I am now. A survivor, a counselor, an advocate, someone who turns pain into purpose. You've come so far, Jennifer said. We've come so far, May corrected. You didn't just rescue me that day. You showed me what it means to care about people you don't know, to fight for justice even when it's hard. You taught me that one person can make a difference. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset through the window. 4 years ago, May had been a girl in chains with desperate eyes, silently pleading to be saved. Today she was a woman who saved others, who gave them hope, who proved that trauma didn't have to be the end of the story. Jennifer's phone buzzed. A message from Detective Pravat. They'd identified another trafficking operation. Another factory. More people in chains. She looked at May. Are you ready?